Okay, good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Polygon article you guys voted on, and that is Luca may not be a gay narrative, but it's absolutely a queer one. So, if you know the difference between what a gay and a queer is, feel free to fill in the blanks. If you know what a gay narrative is, and a queer narrative is, also fill in the blanks. And if you think this exists in a Disney film aimed for children, you are a messed up little man or woman, or whatever the hell you are nowadays. So, creators are drawing from queer stories for drama, then shutting down their queer fans who relate to those stories. No, they're not shutting down any fans. They welcome all people. It's a family film. They're simply saying they are not the thing you think you're watching. These are not queer or gay or homosexual or trans or whatever kind of narrative. This is a story about a magical fish creature who walks amongst humans, literally a fish out of water, to learn about us and have fun because he's a kid. And there's his friend who also left the water with him. And you see, they have this disguise on, so they get wet, it sort of dissolves. They have to put it back together. See, so it's just one big experience. It's kind of like The Little Mermaid, but for kids, and it's more fun, and it's a comedy. It's not a romance. And it's most definitely not a gay narrative or a queer narrative or a romance narrative or a sexual narrative or any of that sense. It's just not there. Okay, so here we go. This is about the film called Luca, which came out apparently last month, June 18th on Disney+. It's a very popular trailer. And no, I have not seen the film, but from the trailer you could watch and figure out very quickly who this film is geared toward and what's going to be in the film. Not every scene, of course, not every nuance, but it's certainly not what this Rafix Collington thinks it is. Even in 2021, in spite of the growing acceptance of LGBTQ plus community, which is not a thing, there is no LGBT plus Q community. It's just a bunch of people, a bunch of individuals, the same way there are no heterosexual communities. We're just a bunch of individuals. That's it. And we accept each other because we don't concern ourselves with other people's lives. We have our own self-interests, and we leave everyone else the hell alone, and we all get along, and everyone's great and happy. So to give yourself a community name or a group of this or that is not necessary. Nothing's wrong with you, okay? A steady increase in queer representation across certain sections of media, queer reads of characters and narratives are still receiving backlash. Yes, because they're wrong. The same way political reads of certain movies and stories are wrong. You can use a lens. The problem is these people who use certain lenses, like a feminist lens or a socialist lens or whatever lens they've got, they instead use a filter. And they only look at the things. Then they say, oh, this clearly is completely 100% a queer narrative, as opposed to saying, well, here in this example, there's some buddy cop elements, or there's some camaraderie elements, which could be interpreted as such, but doesn't make it as such. It is interpreted as such. It is implied as such. It is not actually the thing. Often, that backlash is coming from the writers, directors, and actors behind a given piece, who seem eager to stomp out any potential perception of their work as a queer narrative. Gee, if everyone involved in the production is telling you it's not the thing, maybe it's not the thing. For some reason, those creators never seem to consider the inherent value these reads provide to the community. I don't know which community you're referring to, even though they're drawing on tropes derived from the community's personal experiences. So let me see if I get this straight. You expect the human condition, or whatever, the human element of diversity and people experiencing things subjectively, to know the nuance of a particular subset of that and say, oh, well, you're clearly making a movie for me. And you're like, no, we didn't do that. It was never our intention. We have no knowledge of that, and that's not actually what we made. So we have word of mouth from the creators, from the actors, from the artists, and then we have the actual production, which does not have those things in them. And shared experiences of romantic feelings or concepts that some gay man or some homosexual woman might experience growing up or learning about sexuality could be ubiquitous throughout the human experience. It doesn't really matter. Feelings of sexuality and arousal, you're going to get arousal just walking down the street for no reason at all as you develop into an adult. So Lots of things can cause this. You can then argue the rest is classical conditioning, and you associate things with certain other things. That happens all the time. So there is no coding. And this is the great thing about this narrative. This person is not using the term queer coding. It doesn't appear in this paragraph or in this article at all. And we just learned about queer coding and child coding, like Baby Yoda is not only a child, he's also child coded, whatever the bloody hell that means. So this person isn't even fluent on the latest lingo of bullshit. This is clearly a queer narrative when it's a story for children. This came out recently with Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan's portrayal of Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which also does not have any gay or homoerotic scenes. Many fans read the close physical emotional bond that Sam and Bucky developed throughout the show as a possible romantic stirring. Sure, you can read that as a possible romantic stirring, not an actual romantic scene. It could be implied. I haven't watched the show, but even then, it's just an implication if such a scene even exists. It's not what actually happened in the scene. While the series had nothing definitive on the matter, Mackie quickly tried to squash the idea, bemoaning that two men cannot just be friends these days without being perceived as queer. Yes, because people these days, like this person, are stupid. They are projecting. They are inventing a narrative that isn't there. They are generating what we call headcanon. While it's important for media to depict non-toxic male friendships, again, another word which means nothing. It's not just non-toxic. It can't just be normal. It has to be non-toxic. Not even knowing what the hell a toxic male friendship is. That doesn't even make sense. It seems contradictory. Why would you be friendship with someone who is bad? That's just a simple thing of stop hanging out with that person. His response disheartened many fans who had enjoyed their speculation on the topic. I don't care. Speculate all you want. I do not care. Speculate about anything under the sun. It makes no difference to what reality has shown. And their ability to relate to the characters in their own preferred way. The squashing of a clear queer read. A clear queer read. I don't know what a clear anything is. Let's talk about water. Even then, that's not clear. You can see through it. It could be transparent. It's not clear enough, depending on your definition. Or pure water. But what's a clear queer read? Again, is this a filter or a lens? Which one are you using? Was even more blatant with Pixar's 2021 animated film Luca. Disney's tendency to tease its audience with queer bait, and we learned the term queer bait as well, which is just more bullshit, which I'm not going to get into, only to yank those readings away or have them be blink and you'll miss it moments between background characters. So here we have background characters or secondary or tertiary characters, which are unrelated to the main plot, unrelated to the character development, even if they were to have any, and does not have any homoerotic scenes or implications. This is a story about children, magical fish children, who polymorph into actual children and walk about. It is not a sexual story. There's not a story of sexuality or has sexuality in it, as far as I know. But with Luca, the attempt to shut down audiences' imaginations went a step too far. Good. Keep squashing idiots. Keep squashing away stupid opinions that don't deserve the light of day. No one in 100 years will look back on the Luca film and think, oh yeah, this is clearly a queer narrative. No one. This would be insane if humanity progresses this way and thinks this way. In response to viewers who reacted to trailers by hoping the film might be a childhood gay romance, which doesn't make any sense, Luca director, and actually kind of disgusting when you think about it, Luca director Enrico Casarosa rapidly shut the notion down, saying, I was really keen to talk about a friendship before girlfriends and boyfriends come in to complicate things. He's talking about kids. And there's more than just a bunch of guys in this movie. There's girls as well. There's adults. They befriend a bunch of people in a Italian seaside sort of fishing village. And it's a cute Very colorful, super colorful film, at least from what the trailer's showing us. Lots of wonderful, beautiful, bright scenes. There's no way you can interpret this as sexual unless there's something wrong with you. After the movie's release, it became clear what a reductive stance this was. You can reduce it any way you like. It's simply not there. Well, Casa Rosa believes this story can't be a queer romance because no characters become romantically involved. So not only does the film have no romantic elements, the guy who made the thing says it can't be that because I didn't make it that way. I didn't write it that way. The story hits too many significant, familiar, common aspects of the bibbidi-bobbidi experience for it to be ignored as a queer narrative. First off, good for you. If you interpret it as such and it makes you feel like, oh yeah, I've had these feelings when I was a kid, good for you. And you happen to be gay or whatever. Bravo. That doesn't mean that's what the film's about. That doesn't mean that's what's in the film. That just means your subjective experience of whatever you went through as a kid or adolescent or God knows what else was your experience. And that's it. And that's fine. But you cannot argue that is what is in the film because it's not there. It's only in your mind, in your perspective, nowhere else's. It's particularly important that these notes include several dark and oft-ignored aspects of queer experience in today's world. Okay, first off, no, it's a Disney film for kids. It's not one of those tragic stories from yesteryear that Disney takes and turns into a family film. It's just a family film. There could be some sad parts of the film, some depressing parts, but that doesn't have to somehow coincide with some bizarre, darker aspect of the, I don't know, children who develop homoerotic feelings. Why would they ever want to do, even if that were the case, why would they want to do that? Why would they want to imply that in their narrative? That would make audience members, gay or otherwise, uncomfortable. You don't want to do that. That's not how you address elements of that kind of concept, especially in a children's story. And denying that this reading has any validity, it doesn't, risks doing serious harm. Good. I want you to be hurt. I want you to be hurt by a bloody Disney children's film. If you are so insane that this is your reaction to a Disney flick, you deserve all the pain you get. Self-inflicted in your mind sort of pain, because no one is coming out of the screen and punching you in the face. No one is saying you are worthless. In fact, these films are made to uplift children's imaginations and sense of self-worth. And if you are getting harmed by that because it doesn't pander to you, you have a problem. And it could be you have gender dysphoria. It could be you're confused. It could be you're your average child or young adult growing up and you're trying to get used to what it means to be alive, which would be perfectly normal. And you're not hurting anyone. This film is not hurting anyone. It's you that are doing it to yourself. Ostensibly, okay, about a society of fish people known as sea monsters who live under the sea, concealed from humanity, Luca wastes little time in hitting beats that will be sadly familiar to so many people who have lived in the closet and or had to come to terms with their own identities. So because these two folks are sea monsters and they could polymorph into other humans, somehow this is going to be some queer narrative because you're physically hiding yourself from the rest of humanity. You would think that would be a trans narrative because you're actually physically changing your appearance to look like something else, not a queer narrative. But hey, these guys interchange the LGBTQT LMNOP names, and there you go. Everything fits under the golden umbrella of bullshit. From the beginning, Luca's family warns him against approaching humans, telling him that people will see his differences and won't accept him for who he really is. Luca has a vision of trying to leave the ocean, an image which comes back time and again as a metaphor for embracing both sides of his identity, but he's held back by an unseen force, and if he cannot bring himself to leave the stifling safety of the water. It sounds like Luca just wants to experience different things. He wants to go out into the world of man and go, wow. And that's pretty much what we get in the first few seconds, or the first, 30 seconds of this film, or this trailer rather. Just, hey, I want to get out in the fresh air and learn about humans. That's it. He wants to learn. As Luca's finally coming out of the water for the first time, he immediately assumes human form. I think they're taking the coming out verb a bit too strongly here to imply these are people who are coming out of the closet, which is, that's retarded. We've had these talks back in the 80s. No one cares anymore. You're gay. You're trans. You're this or that. No one cares. We literally do not care. Good for you. Live your life. Good luck. At that point, Luca moves into documenting his struggles to come to terms with his identity, finding community, and feeling betrayed or abandoned by his family. Well, if his family tells him not to do something and he betrays them, they're going to reprimand him. So it's kind of about what being a rebel is all about. Now, you wouldn't have much of a story if he didn't rebel and experience the world of the human realm from a sea creature experience. That's kind of the point of the film, so you expect that. Luca panics about his emergence and is terrified of the physical changes he goes through outside of the water. It's a compelling image of a boy seeing himself for who he truly is for the first time. His panic then turns into denial. With the support of another member of his community, he's able to come to accept both parts of himself as part of his complete identity. So this is, I'm sure, an element of the story, but it's not about coming to terms with your identity as an existence. It's about an adventure and seeing how the adventure changes you as a person. Not that you identify as a human and a fish monster. That's not the point of the film. All stories that go on a journey are about how the journey impacts the character. And for a child's film, it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with feelings of sexuality. There could be a comedic joke about sexuality, about maybe some Italian woman and she's like flirting or whatever, but not to children, not to the main character. Having found kinship in Alberto, another fish person who lives out of the water, Luca develops a love of life on land, a passion for being out rather than living his life hidden away. Now, living hidden away is not necessarily a bad thing, although he's making it sound as if this is a horrible thing, living under the water. It's just another way of living. There's plenty of fish people under the water, and they're having a great time. When his family learns of his new life, they try to have him move to the deep, away from the temptations of the surface. The deep is portrayed as horrible, a place of self-denial, and they're willing to make him suffer to keep him away from what they see as immoral, in a clear parallel to the conversion therapy or wilderness therapy that so many young LGBTQ plus people are subjected to by homophobic communities. I don't know if you're familiar with wilderness survival, but that is done for unruly kids. I don't know what this has to do with being gay or this or that. Maybe it's some weird American tradition in somewhat conservative circles. But to my experience and the stories I've heard of young ladies or young men as well, they throw you into the wilderness for 2 weeks to survive on your own. And that will straighten you right up. And if it doesn't, there's something wrong. There's something else. And hopefully you've learned whatever lesson, what is most important in your life, which is to live. None of this identity bullshit. None of this, I am who I think I am bullshit. There's a difference between being homosexual and having issues of your own identity, which a lot of people do not quite grasp. But you're not going to find that in a Disney Pixar film about a child wanting to learn about the world of man. Once Luca and Alberto arrive in the human town, the story moves away from Luca's journey of self-acceptance and his attempts to find kinship and community, and focuses instead on his struggle to find his way as an outsider in a biased, unfriendly, wider world. Okay, endless glimpses of media in the town, from movie posters to statues, help drive fear over the existence of monsters and glorifies violence against them. In the same way, plenty of media in our own world still portrays LGBTQ plus identities as other and makes them the subject of violence or ridicule. I don't think they're the subject of violence. Yes, there are some people who are still uncomfortable, as they are uncomfortable with anything which is alien to them, which is normal. but I've never met anyone who is acquainted with a violent person who reacts that way. And even if that were to happen, they'd be sent to jail for a few days at least. So assault is bad. It doesn't matter who it's against. So this is a non-issue. And people will always dislike or be alien to things they're not comfortable with. So when Alberto unmasks himself as a sea monster, Luca sees his passing privilege to avoid being targeted by the aggressive mob from the town, instead joining in the abuse and persecution of Alberto. This is a common trope of the queer experience in the LGBTQ plus life. Okay. Again, this is just wrapping everyone up together. There's a big difference between being a trans person and a gay person. There's a big difference. And I don't know why he's saying the queer experience or the common trope of the queer experience. Are we talking about a storytelling trope? Are we talking about a life thing, a life pattern? I don't know what the queer experience in trope in a story is, let alone in the LGBTQ plus life and media that plays out as a story beat in narratives ranging from an episode of the fantasy series The Magicians to the holiday movie Happiest Season. I don't know these films, so I can't argue or talk about them. But I'm a little unclear. If he's just talking about a stereotype in stories, no one's getting hurt. And if it's a common trope, then there's a reason why it exists. And you're not explaining what the trope is. You're not explaining how it exists within those films. So I can just drop this entire line of thought because he's not giving it any thought either. The film closes with a direct narrative about Luca becoming adopted within the community for his identity in a way that borders on the heavy-handed. Massimo, a fisherman the boys get to know, is renowned for hating and hunting sea monsters. When he comes to know Alberto and Luca while they're both closeted, okay, they're both hiding their original identity, he's able to see them as people first and look past his prejudice. Yeah, because they walk around and talk like normal kids. They're not dangerous creatures. They're just a bunch of kids to him. Once he learns their secret, he accepts them who they are, and he champions their right to exist over the objections of others who still challenge their place in society. One of the final poignant scenes shows Luca's mother worrying over how her son will be able to exist openly in the human world, with his grandmother answering, "Some people, they'll never accept him, but some will, and he seems to know how to find the good ones." Sounds like a good story. Sounds like a guy who wants to experience more about life and enjoys that new life and learns about it and gets accepted by the people in that new life. It seems strange that Casarosa could unintentionally lay out such a direct blow-by-blow metaphor for so many common queer experiences. Maybe because it has nothing to do with being queer or gay. Again, it's just saying queer is just such a blanket term. I don't know what he's referring to, especially nowadays. Why just say for so many people who have had this experience? It seems stranger that he would then deny that reading of the film, telling viewers who see the parallels that they are wrong. That's because they are wrong. You can feel catharsis for many reasons. You can identify with a story for many reasons. Just because the human condition is very similar, whether you're having feelings of eroticism towards people who are the same or opposite gender as you, doesn't mean it's somehow some unheard of thing that's never occurred before. I'm quite sure people who are gay and bisexual or trans or whatever have human emotions. And they're very, very similar to every bloody other human that's ever existed. And he's telling you, no, I didn't think this. I was thinking my own thing. Sorry. Well, he has suggested that Luca is a story about the type of friendship that can push you into change, push you into finding yourself. Sure, as virtually every hero's journey is, or every protagonist story should be about, which is changing oneself at the climax of the story. The movie clearly contains enough direct parallels to specify, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, that a queer reading of the film is just as viable. No, it's not. No, it is not. You can interpret it any way you want. It doesn't make it viable. It makes it subjective. That's the whole point when you say, I'm going to do a queer reading. As soon as you say X reading, A, B, C, D, L, M, N, O, P reading, you are now interpreting the film as something else. And we don't know whether that's going to be a lens, a filter, or a combination. So you can do this in critical analysis. You can use all kinds of filters and lenses, but you dare tell me that's what the film's about. Then you don't know what you're talking about. You're making stuff up. And ultimately, whether viewers decide Luca parallels their own stories isn't for a director, writer, actor, or marketing department to dictate. I agree. Have whatever opinion you like. That's great. But we're going to shut you down when you make articles like this because you're making shit up. Creators don't get to decide what message viewers should make for narrative. I agree. Viewers' relationships with film is subjective. Yes, it is. Built from their own interpretations as they bring elements from their own lives to their reading. Yes. That also means you're biased and blinding yourself, and you're seeing through a tinted filter or rose-tinted glasses, as we like to say. You're romanticizing about something which isn't actually there. And you can do that. Have fun, enjoy, whatever. But don't tell me that's what the narrative is about. That can open the door for unintended queer reading of any work, yeah, which is retarded. But once a story reaches its audience, it's out of the creator's hands. This sentence makes no sense. He's talking about how your subjective experiences can open the door for anything. You're like, you're right. You can be a complete idiot and live in your brain all your life and invent shit's not there. And then he's saying, but once a story reaches its audience, so once someone publishes a film, it's out of the creator's hands. So what are you trying to say? That's two unrelated ideas. Crucially, creators aren't always fully aware of the layers of experience they're mining or what their work may be presenting to any given audience. That's great. That's awesome. I'm happy that an idiot can look at this film and go, wow, I related so much to Luca and his friend because it reminded me of my childhood for whatever reason. That's great. Layers are what you do for a good plot. You have multiple reasons for plots to exist and coincide with each other. And that's how you get identification with characteristics of a character, so characterization. That's all good stuff. But again, you're interpreting it. You're not actually seeing what's there. So that's the problem. Players read a trans narrative into the game Celeste, and some become frustrated that the creators would not confirm or deny the protagonist's gender identity. Why would they? Why should they? What if the creator died? Who cares? Who cares what the creator wanted? What matters is what's there. However, after completing a post-game edition, creator Maddie Thorson acknowledged in their blog they haven't previously realized they were trans, and the director and that the character was. Again, if you just said in the previous paragraph, creators don't get to decide what message viewers should take from narrative. Now you're saying, well, this guy thinks they're trans. Who cares? Go play Celeste. I can interpret it as not being trans. In fact, I don't even need to interpret. I can just play it and go, yeah, this is a character in a story. They're not trans. They never said they were trans. Why would I interpret it that way? You see, there's one thing to be subjective. There's one thing just take it the surface value of what is actually in front of your face. What is there? You could read into that. You can make your own shit up. Doesn't make a difference. It doesn't change what's actually there. While Thorson was drawing on personal experiences, they didn't yet understand what those experiences signified or what they could mean for both Thorson and for others. Again, same thing with Mr. Casarosa. He doesn't care. He doesn't know the mind of other people on the planet, nor should he. Openly queer narratives are still in short supply, blah, 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 blah. This is more crap. This is a long article. For Casarosa, here's the last paragraph, just to waste everyone's time. For Casarosa and everyone else who watches Luca and sees their own experiences reflected in a simple story of two childhood friends, that reading will always be there and no one can take it away. Yes, that goes for everyone. Queer kids and adults alike have watched this film and seen it as a caring... Queer kids? Okay, sure. And not only acknowledge the joys of their own experiences, but also crucially explores how they can be painful and alienating. Great. That's good. You're identifying with the plights of the protagonists. That's great. Nothing wrong with that. Denying such a reading doesn't just hurt viewers. No, it doesn't. Who already see themselves in a story. It also shuts down the external community that might not otherwise engage with explicitly queer media You can use Luca's sensitive coming out story as a learning experience. First off, the external community, I'm guessing they're referring to people who aren't queer or aren't part of the supposed queer community or bibbidi-bobbidi-boo groups. I don't know what that is. I have friends who are gay, bisexual, trans, and whatever. They're not part of any group or team or Facebook group or whatever. They're just a bunch of individuals. And they talk about these topics all the time, so it doesn't really bother us or them. If you're just saying just talk to people, then that's fine. Go travel. Go talk to new cultures and new cities and new languages if you can. Denying such a reading doesn't just hurt viewers, blah, blah, blah. It also just down external community. Blah, blah. The queer reading of Luca should be as safeguarded as Casarosa's own interpretation. But we just said it doesn't matter. So who cares what the creators think? If the creators' opinion doesn't matter, what does your opinion matter? What you're essentially coming down to is everyone's opinion is valid when you're interpreting something. But the rest of us aren't trying to interpret it. We're just enjoying it for what it actually is. And if your priority is queer, gay, homophobic, homoerotic imagery, blah, 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 then that's what you're going to see. But you're walking into a film or any piece of media with blinded and covered eyes. And that is doing you're hurting yourself in experiencing reality, even the reality of a fictional narrative. It does the media no harm to let these queer readings stand. I would argue it does. It benefits no one to squash them. Yes, it does. Truth is much more important than your interpretation, even if it's your own personal bias, especially because we don't need that in critical discourse. We need real critical discourse where actual evidence and facts of a movie are seen for what they are, not for what you think they are. Anyway, guys, thanks for the suggestion. That was a longer article from Polygon, but it's Polygon. What are you going to do? Thanks for listening. Have yourself a great day.